Welcome to Newt's World Podcast on the iHeart Podcast Network, the greatest American inventions. Today, the device that connected the world, not the internet, we've covered that. The device to put a phone in every pocket, on every continent, reaching people who had never had access to a landline, the mobile phone. On April 3rd, 1973, a Motorola engineer named Martin Cooper stood on a sidewalk on 6th Avenue in Midtown Manhattan, held up a device that weighed 2.5 pounds and stood 9 inches tall, and made a phone call. He called Joel Engel, the head of cellular research at Bell Labs, Motorola's chief rival in the race to build a handheld cellular phone, to tell him politely that Motorola had done it first. Cooper's prototype could make calls for about 30 minutes before the battery died, needed 10 hours to recharge, had no display, and did nothing except make and receive calls. It cost the equivalent of about $30 million to develop. The concept of cellular communication had been developed at Bell Labs in 1970. The key insight: instead of one powerful transmitter covering a wide area, divide geography into small cells, each served by a low-power base station. And as the user moves from cell to cell, the call is automatically handed off. This made mobile telephony scalable. You could serve far more simultaneous users. AT&T proposed to the FCC that they build a cellular network. The FCC allowed trials that included Motorola. The race was on. Motorola won the race to the portable handset. AT&T built most of the early network infrastructure. Commercial cellular service launched in Chicago in October 1983. The first commercial phone, the Motorola Dynatac 8000X, retailed for $3,995, roughly $12,000 today. A phone for wealthy business people. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, phones shrank and prices fell. Networks expanded. In 1990, about 5 million cellular subscribers in the United States. By 2000, 100 million. By 2010, smartphones had arrived, and the mobile phone had become something radically more than a phone. But before we get to smartphones, that's our next episode, I want to spend time on the mobile phone's impact in parts of the world that often get less attention. In the developing world, the mobile phone leapfrogged infrastructure that wealthy countries had spent a century building. Vast populations in Africa, rural South Asia, and Latin America never had landline service. The economics of copper wire networks hadn't reached them. Then, in the 1990s and 2000s, mobile networks arrived. Cellular towers were far cheaper and faster to build than copper wire. Suddenly, people who had never had any phone had a mobile phone. The effects were immediate. Fishermen in Kerala, India, began calling ahead to ports to check prices rather than sailing to the nearest market and accepting whatever they could get. Fish prices became more uniform across the region, fishermen's profits increased, and consumer prices fell because information could flow. M-Pesa, a mobile money service launched in Kenya in 2007, let people without bank accounts send and receive money via text message. Within a few years, more than half of Kenya's adults used it. People in rural areas could receive money from city relatives. Small merchants could accept payment without cash. The unbanked became financially included for the first time. Today, there are more than 8 billion mobile subscriptions in the world. More subscriptions than people. The most connected communication network in human history. Built on a concept from Bell Labs and realized by a Motorola engineer on a New York sidewalk. Martin Cooper, now in his 90s, remains enthusiastic about mobile technology. He does express one regret: distracted walking. People staring at their phones while walking into traffic. He feels somehow personally responsible. Next time we reach the invention that merged the mobile phone, the personal computer, the internet, and the camera into a single device that 6 billion people now carry, the smartphone. Coming up, Clete Willems, Chief Global Affairs Officer at Netflix, joins me to discuss Netflix's growing impact on the American economy, the company's billion-dollar investment in New Jersey, and how Netflix is helping tell America's story as the nation prepares to celebrate its 250th anniversary. I am really pleased to welcome my guest, Clete Willems. Clete is the Chief Global Affairs Officer at Netflix, where he is responsible for the company's engagement with governments all around the world. He joined Netflix in April 2025 after a distinguished career in government, law, and public policy. Prior to Netflix, he was a partner at Aiken Gump. During the first Trump administration, he served as Deputy Director of the National Economic Council. Before that, he spent time as a career attorney at the U.S. Trade Representative and as an aide to Congressman Paul Ryan. Today, we're discussing Netflix's impact on America, from creating jobs and investing in communities across all 50 states to sharing American stories with audiences around the world as the country marks its 250th anniversary. Clete, welcome and thank you for joining me on Newt's World.
It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Before joining Netflix, you spent time in government, law, and Congress, including serving as a career attorney at the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative during the Obama administration and then working with Speaker Paul Ryan. I'm curious, how have these experiences shaped the way you think about global affairs?
Yeah, look, what's really interesting is there's quite a bit of overlap between a career in international trade and what we're doing at Netflix. And one of the things that attracted me to international trade in the first place was that not only were you having mutually beneficial economic exchange between countries, but you were also promoting a much greater cultural understanding. And what I think is exciting about that when it comes to Netflix is that's exactly what we do. Through stories, we are able to bring cultures, bring folks closer together. And I think from the perspective of the United States, it's a really excellent form of soft power. And we're able to share our values with the rest of the world, things like freedom of expression, freedom of speech. And then, of course, as a consumer, right, you get to see stories that are uniquely local to these other cultures, and you sort of feel like you have a window into that. And so I think there's actually a lot more overlap between what I was doing working on international trade issues for the U.S. government and now sort of promoting cultural understanding through storytelling at Netflix. And so it's been a really exciting transition in that regard.
Well, I have to say, as a Netflix customer, I am amazed at the range of material you guys develop and how you're sort of continuously modernizing it and refreshing it. I mean, that's just an enormous challenge.
Our mission is to entertain the world, but also to run a successful business. And the best way that you can do that is by having something for everyone and constantly updating that portfolio of entertainment. And so, in the United States, I think we have something that appeals to folks all across the political spectrum. It doesn't matter whether you like action, whether you like rom-coms, whether you like documentaries, you can find all of that. And then I think internationally, what we try to do is when we go into other markets, we try to have at least some offering of locally produced local content that they can view as well. And like I said, what's exciting about that is sometimes even from the US, you get a window into these cultures with that authentic content that you wouldn't otherwise get. We wouldn't be as successful as we hope to be if we didn't have something for everyone.
And at the same time, as you point out, you are a business. You're not just a culture entity. And I know you recently indicated that Netflix had contributed more than $225 billion to the U.S. economy over the last decade. I mean, that's really a very significant business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, we don't hide that fact. As I said, there's sort of the two mission statements: entertain the world, but be a profitable business. In so doing, not only are we doing well for Netflix and our own employees, but we're really impacting the communities in which we operate. If you'll let me walk through some of these numbers, I think they are, pretty staggering. Like you said, $225 billion to the U.S. economy over the last 10 years. And part of the reason we've been able to do that is because we are filming in all 50 states. We film in all 50 U.S. states. We've had 1,700 productions filmed in the United States over that period in 1,200 different locations. So just think about that. And, it's red states, it's blue states, not only California, but we do a ton in Texas and Pennsylvania. And I know in a place that is near and dear to your heart in Georgia, that's been the home of some of our most successful productions like Stranger Things. And that impact has led to not only over 140,000 production jobs, but we've also contributed to all those different local communities. And it's really exciting, when a Netflix production comes into town, you see it transforming the community. I think it's a really exciting economic story that we have to tell. And, we're trying to invest even further in the U.S. economy by creating new infrastructure, including a big studio up in New Jersey. So it's an exciting story for the U.S. economy.
I think people don't realize how big a producer Netflix is. It's not just that you're consuming other studios. You're now a major studio factor in your own right.
Right. We've evolved, right? The Netflix story is the story of constant innovation. And I do like to say it's sort of a unique American story where we started with the crazy idea of mailing DVDs around to disrupt the video store business. Then we got into streaming. And what we've done more recently, just in the last 10 or 11 years, is we've really got into content production ourselves. And people may remember, House of Cards was one of the first ones. Obviously a unique DC story, maybe not quite as realistic to your experiences on the Hill.
I watched every episode. I thought it was brilliantly done. I thought the cast was extraordinary. Plus, I liked the music. We could identify with the whole opening where you're driving through Washington. So I always tell people, I think that that's a remarkable series.
Yeah, but that was really a pivot for us. That was one of the very first ones that we originally produced. And now we're into that game very heavily, where we are making our own Netflix content in addition to stuff that we license from other studios. And that does bring me back to New Jersey, which is as we continue to be more of an original content producer, we need the infrastructure to support that. And that's why we're investing heavily in building a world-class Hollywood of the East in New Jersey.
When we come back, we'll head to Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, where Netflix is investing $1 billion to transform a former Army base into one of the largest production hubs in America, and what that investment says about the future of American filmmaking. It's really interesting because you're taking over a place that was originally a military base, and you're turning it into a major economic opportunity in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. As I understand, the scale of this studio is going to be amazing. How do you think about an investment like that, and over how many years do you think it's going to take to really amortize making this will be, I think, the largest East Coast production hub? It's a major investment.
No, that's right. I do think the history on this is really exciting, right? I mean, this was Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, which was a significant U.S. base for almost 100 years. It was the home of the U.S. Signal Corps. It was a major communications hub for the U.S. military. And, it was a really part of the fabric of that community. And unfortunately, what happened was in 2011, as part of the, what we call the BRAC process, which was the base realignment and closure process, where the military, had to make decisions about, which bases it would modernize and which ones it would close, it was shut down. And it was really tough for that community. But we saw an opportunity there. We went in and we purchased this land. It's, I think, around 290 acres. So this is massive. We're going to have 12 sound stages there when it's complete. And really, it is something we intend to really be an East Coast production hub. I mean, this is a $1.2 billion investment we're making, which, ultimately is going to support, tons of productions there. And, in terms of your question and amortization, I mean, I don't know that I can give the specific financials on that. What I will say is we hope that this thing will be up and operational full go in around 2 years from now.
If you have 12 sound stages on that scale, I mean, you'll really rival anything in Hollywood.
Yeah, it's going to be massive. And it's really a place where we're going to do a ton of production on the East Coast.
I can tell you this from the Georgia experience, that when Georgia began to be in tax policy and regulatory policy favorable to movie and TV production, there was a very substantial number of creative people who moved in. I mean, it really changed the population of Atlanta in terms of people who would never have come to Georgia before. And I think you're going to have in northern New Jersey just an enormous impact.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping. And I mean, look, let me touch on Georgia for a second, because again, I know this is something that's significant for you. Our number one show ever, Stranger Things, was filmed there, and more than 8,000 jobs were created in Georgia. And what's exciting about it too, I think, as you may have experienced, was not only were we creating jobs in those communities, but you had filming locations, grocery stores where people went to, local businesses that all the fans would come visit, who really saw an uptick in their economic activity as well. And, you know, one of our top shows from this year, His and Hers, is also based in Georgia. Dahlonega is where that was filmed. And so it really changed, I think, things in Georgia. And we're hoping to replicate that in New Jersey. I mean, that's the playbook that we really want to follow.
I found, and Calista found, The Perfect Couple to be one of the most extraordinary series. We have actually seen it 3 times. It's ridiculous. I mean,
but you know what's going to happen now.
But the quality of the acting is so good. The scripts are so good. It's like watching an old friend. I can't quite explain it.
Yeah. Well, that's one we filmed up in Cape Cod. So that's a Massachusetts story. But, you know, you could pretty quickly see, you know, where the filming is being done in all these different locations.
And I assume that that was a real strategy that when you truly have a national footprint, are you also going to build an international filming capability?
Yeah. So let me just finish on the domestic side, right? Which is part of the reason that we have been as far flung as we are is, number one, we know that that's what our consumers want, right? They like content from all over the country, representing all different parts of the country. And the more authentic and local we can make it, the better that it is. I would also say, I mean, one of the things that I think you'll appreciate, Mr. Speaker, you know, is low taxes and low regulations drive business.
You clearly worked for Paul Ryan.
So I know the playbook, and you know what? It works, right? And so one of the things that Georgia did, one of the things that New Jersey did, is they had a very favorable regulatory climate. They lowered some regulations to make it easier to film there, but they also had tax incentives. And so that has been part of what has helped us spread our production through the United States. And I don't want to say, look, we still do things in California. That's still an important part of the ecosystem. But really over time, some of the production has moved to places that are easier to film and offer those kinds of incentives. Now, internationally, to get to your specific question, you know, we also do have a strategy of local for local, where we try to film things in country that are primarily intended to appeal to that local audience, right? And our consumers in Spain, for example, really like shows that are produced with Spanish producers and Spanish actors in Spain. And we've done that in a couple different locations around the world. And the best case is, right, not only do they become popular in Spain, but those shows also travel. Korea is another one where we've had a lot of great success. Squid Game was one of the big ones that traveled, and there's tons of shows that come out of Korea as well. So, you know, we do the vast majority of our production in the United States. That's our home, but we are also looking at ways to do local for local around the world.
When you get to something, again, another one of your shows that Chris and I enjoy immensely is Virgin River. When you get to a show which didn't come back year after year, I think they've now done 7 years of it. How big a relative advantage is that? From a corporate standpoint, if you got a winner that, you know, you could keep reproducing and sustain your audience.
For sure. I mean, look, we do want to keep our viewership numbers up and strong. And when you do have IP that is tried and true, that is part of the solution. And so certainly shows like that are really an important part of what we do. Stranger Things had full 5 seasons. So that was a big one. You know, Wednesday is another one that we hope to sort of, you know, year in, year out, Virgin River. So that does make a difference for sure.
I'm assuming it also gives you a certain advantage because you now have eyeballs that then look at other shows because they come to you for one of the ones they love and then they look around.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what's great? We haven't really talked about Netflix. We've talked a lot about Netflix as entertainment, But one of the other great elements of Netflix is Netflix as a technology innovator, right? And obviously, we were the first one into streaming to produce that product, but there are certain aspects of our technology that are really special. And we have developed a really good ability to predict what people are going to want to see and serve it up to them. So what's interesting about this is you've seen, when you talk about the Netflix effect, I've already talked about the economic impact on communities. But what you've also seen is that sometimes shows that underperform in other venues and on other services, when they come to Netflix, they explode. And the two biggest examples of this are Breaking Bad, which was sort of a smaller show on AMC before it came onto Netflix and just blew up into the phenomena that it's become. And Suits is another one, which was sort of on linear TV, wasn't quite as big of a deal. And when it came to Netflix, it blew up. And we think that part of the reason for that is that we've, over time, really honed our ability to predict what people want to watch. And then when you go on to Netflix, it's there for you. And so I think our technological capabilities are also a key part of our success.
How big is your worldwide audience?
I think we have around 300 million subscribers globally. And then you got, how many people in each household. But I mean, that's give or take where we are.
It's remarkable. I think back to when it first started.
We've come a long way. A couple folks getting something in the U.S. Postal Service and now, a global streaming. Yeah. So it's been a great story of innovation and evolution.
Coming up, we'll discuss how Netflix is celebrating America's storytelling as we approach our 250th anniversary. I particularly want to talk to you now because Netflix is making a commitment about America's storytelling for the 250th anniversary. And I think it'll be helpful for folks to realize that you're taking it seriously. You've already had a 5-part documentary series, The American Experiment. Can you sort of share with us both that, but also the kind of general approach you're taking to thinking about America 250?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I think, as we've been talking about, as we're sort of sitting here and reflecting on our country's 250th birthday, I do think, and I mean this, that Netflix in a lot of ways sort of embodies that American spirit, both in the sense of the story of entrepreneurship and innovation that we have, but also the fact that we're a place where you can go and see all kinds of different content representing all kinds of worldviews. We give creators the microphone, we let them express themselves, and you can see almost everything. And I think that is that unique American ideal of openness and freedom of expression. We are making efforts to be more specifically on our nation's birthday, both produce and then highlight content that people who have that patriotic feeling over the next couple of days, they can go on Netflix, and we have a USA 250 hub that we've developed. And as you mentioned, American Experiment is a recent documentary series where we go through some of the different periods in American history. We interview a bunch of folks across the political spectrum, left, right, and center, and sort of get their perceptions on different moments in American history. One of the other ones, I don't know if you've seen this one, but I really liked. It's kind of not a full documentary. It's sort of fictionalized, but based on a history account of James Garfield's presidency. It's called Death by Lightning. And this is one that I thought was really cool because it's a period of history that we don't focus on so much. And so I was watching this and I was Googling all things, about Chester Arthur and things like that. And so we got some deep cuts on American history and then a whole other series of different kinds of patriotic content.
I've not seen it yet, but it's on my must-see list because so many of my friends have said that is a brilliant show.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good. It's because it's the high quality of production where it's, like a House of Cards type thriller, but also it just interests you in this period of American history that I think is probably underrepresented in the classroom and things that we learn. I really liked it.
Do you have a documentary division in that sense?
Yeah, we have teams at Netflix who specialize in all different areas. And so we have folks who do sort of the traditional scripted film, scripted TV. And then we've got folks who do documentaries. We've got other capabilities as well. I mean, I think another area we're really getting into now is into live and into sports. We're differentiated throughout the company to make sure we can produce all these things at a high level.
There's sort of an entire industry wrapped under one particular brand, but you do so many different things. And anybody who doubts me, just pull up Netflix and just scan all the different kind of things that you guys make available on any given evening.
Yeah, and I think, look, I mean, if you explore the America 250 hub, I mean, you're going to see that diversity on display. You know, I mentioned these two historical, one's a documentary, one's more of a series. Then we also have, you know, a lot of really good classic American stories, the film and TV stuff. And we've got sports stuff in there. I really like some of the sports documentaries. I was just watching one, Hulk Hogan, the throwback nostalgia from the 80s, but then you see him walking out there with the flag around him, you know, so there's a lot of great stuff in there that kind of a diversity of interest. And some of it is more fun, you know, like a Hogan. Some of it is more serious, you know, like the American Experiment, but, you know, a little bit of everything.
We were both at Madison Square Garden for the last big Trump rally and then at the convention. And watching Hogan, just the way he would come out on stage. I mean, this was a guy who knew how to be a showman.
Oh, yeah, he sure did.
He knew how to keep your attention at almost all times. Do you find a growing interest in sports films in that sense? I'm looking at, for example, the explosion of NFL games in terms of their ratings. Sports seems to build its own audience in a very unique way.
Yeah, we have been getting more into that area. And right now our strategy is primarily around big events. But we did pick up for this upcoming year, we have 5 different NFL games. I'm very proud to say, as a former Wisconsinite, 2 Packers games. We got a Packers game on Christmas. We got a Packers game around Thanksgiving. But we've got 5 games this year. And, you know, that is another way that we're able to sort of drive viewership. And I think what we try to do is to make it more of an event and to give it more of an experience than just a typical NFL game. You know, one of the games we're going to have this year that's never been done before is Thanksgiving Eve. So if you don't want to wait until Thanksgiving Day to watch the game, but you know, all these events that we do, we have big halftime shows. So on one of the Christmas games last year, you know, we had Snoop Dogg on. So it's not just, hey, a typical NFL game. We really try to eventize it and make it something that's unique and exciting.
I mean, the whole sports business has evolved in ways that you wouldn't have thought of. I should tell you, by the way, that Callista's from Wisconsin.
You did well.
Yeah, I did very well. Calista and I own 1 share of Packer stock. When I run into these various really wealthy guys who actually own entire teams, I often say to them, you want to have an owners meeting? They are never amused. They just think this idea of a community-owned football team is just so out of what they're interested in.
Well, I'm glad you guys are going to be able to watch 2 Packer victories on Netflix this year.
Yeah, and that's important to us because we'll be in Switzerland. We'll be able to pick it up off of Netflix. So let me ask you, this is remarkable, and I hope people realize what an amazing growth in complexity and market size that Netflix has been. But I want to ask you one personal question, which is, given that this is the 250th anniversary, how will you be spending the 4th of July?
You know, obviously I'm going to do some of the things in and around, you know, the anniversary that the administration and others are celebrating in DC. But on the 4th itself, I mean, I'm going to celebrate the good old fashioned American way. I'm going to be with my family. I'm going to put some burgers and brats on the grill. Maybe I'll jump in the pool. For me, this is just a great time to just celebrate and hang out with my family. And hopefully we get a nice sunny day.
That sounds pretty darn good. I mean,
I'm excited.
I do think that's okay for Americans to enjoy and celebrate and not necessarily go to a large crowd.
Yeah, I have little kids, right? So it's tough to corral them, if you will, into the big crowds. So we may try to do some stuff, you know, the day before and things like that. But I think, you know, when it comes down to the fireworks itself, we'll probably actually watch some of that on TV and hang out by the house. Yeah.
That's why you get a large screen television.
Exactly right. Then when we're done, we'll put on Netflix, right?
That's exactly right. That's wonderful. Clete, I really want to thank you for joining me. As somebody who does belong to Netflix and who've watched your products for many years and watched the evolution towards a much more sophisticated global system, I really appreciate you taking the time to share with me and to share with our listeners. And you have an amazing product, and it's impressive how much time and energy and capability is going into expanding, improving, and reaching out so that Netflix will be even bigger, more entertaining, and with a wider range of options in the coming years.
Well, thank you so much for that. And thanks for all your thoughtful questions. Thanks for being a fan. And I hope you have an amazing 4th of July.
Thank you to my guests, Clete Willems. Newt's World is produced by Gingrich 360 and iHeartMedia. Our executive producer is Garnsey Sloan. Our researcher is Rachel Peterson. Special thanks to the team at Gingrich 360. If you've been enjoying Newt's World, I hope you'll go to Apple Podcasts and both rate us with 5 stars and give us a review so others can learn what it's all about. Join me on Substack at Gingrich360.net. I'm Newt Gingrich. This is Newt's World.